Good morning.
Morning.
I saw a tweet the other day that being a crypto founder is like waking up every day and getting punched right in the face.
Uh-huh.
Generally accurate?
No, it's weirder than that.
Okay, actually, I want how so? Like, what is the what is it like to be not just like it's not just like being head of a company. It's like head of a community as well, like head of like, it's not like a regular company. You're decentralized. Like you're like people can build on AO and Arweave anytime, anywhere, anonymously. What is it like?
Well, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think way more interesting than being the head of a company. But I certainly would never call myself the head of the community. Like that. Geez, if that is if that's actually true, then we failed. Yeah, I mean, I got into building this technology because I wanted to see something existed in the world, which didn't have a head per se. It was just a neutral protocol that guaranteed people rights, the rights to build on top of it, being part of it. Um, yeah, I think it's. I mean, what's the experience like? I said it was stranger than being punched in the face each morning, because sometimes you're being punched in the face. Other times, though, people are making like memes of you and stuff, which is just as weird, like and off-putting, I guess. I mean, it's fine. Like I don't care either way, particularly. But it is very odd
Yeah.
for sure.
Odd, it sounds like a very good way to put it. And the community and Ford Research and everyone has just launched AO as of February of this year. So back in the protocol launch games, I would love to pick your brain now that we're, let's see, it launched in February. It's November when we're filming this, about 8 months in. Uh, Maybe time to do a quick retrospective of how the process has gone. My first question to you would be like, how do you think it's gone? Like, have what were the highlights for you in terms of the mainnet launch, and then what were frankly the lowlights? I think like people would love to hear about it.
Well, I think so when we launched Arweave, it was relatively it's actually spookily similar in many respects. And I think I wrote a blog post back then where, for some reason, I decided it was a good idea to rate out of 10 how well the launch had gone. Don't know why, but and I think I said like somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 out of 10. I would say the same here. um, yeah, it's a complete mess. Uh, but also, to be honest, as is V1 of, well, at least as far as I can tell, almost everything.
Uh,
I think we could certainly have run communications. Just communicated more. That would have helped. But frankly, everyone was so busy building the damn thing,
yeah.
and also trying to keep up with demand, that yeah, there just wasn't too much time for it. So complete chaos, I would say. But now, um, one thing that I think went better uh, than Arweave and people don't yet properly understand is that we didn't cut corners when we were building it. Um, there was a moment. So I guess story time, if you
Let's start that.
will.
I'm here. Yeah.
All right. So, um, okay. So we got started building AO like 2 years, a couple of months ago, and yeah, basically the the observation was really like that this was possible was a crystallization of what we'd been thinking about with the design of SmartWeave. SmartWeave was basically a lazy evaluation system. It was the first, contract system, I think, of its kind, certainly on Arweave, but I think quite possibly anywhere. That was built in this way that you use the network for consensus on ordering of transactions, but not the outputs, because the outputs are implied by the inputs as long as the computation is deterministic. That was the basic idea. Um, Yeah, and so we got started building it because we needed a scalable system for having on-chain markets, but also agents that trade content. That was actually for Odyssey. That was the thing that got us started in the first place. And so the guys built out an incredible credit to them on this. This is really, yeah, people do not, I think, understand quite how difficult this was. But they built a sort of MVP version of AO in 3 or 4 months. Um, and from launch day, I think in the first week we had something like, I want to say 4,000 developers try it, which is crazy. Like for Arweave, it took years to get to that point. And this was the first week, and we were sitting on a prototype. And if we rewind way back to the beginning, there was a moment where Tom and I were talking, and we basically agreed, well, look, we'll just see if like people are interested in this, if it even solves our problem. We'll build like really prototype MVP version, and then we'll throw it away. We agreed like we're not taking this code base to production. It's not a good idea, so we can cut all the corners just to make it work. Well, sure enough, people did like it. But then we were in this interesting game where people quite quickly, and I think a lot of the reason for this was just how sort of intuitive and easy to use AOS. Um, yeah, that experience is as a developer. You can just like log into it like a terminal and just start hacking on stuff, and it just works. Or at least certainly when things are going better, it just works. Now, if you run a Hyper-V node, yeah, it just works. But certainly at the time, it was like working most of the time in testnet. So yeah, lots of people were trying it. It was pretty clear we were onto something, and the architecture scales like properly. Just it that there's no limit to the scale it can reach. So we were scaling up the hardware to meet what the architecture can do, but at the same time, the software implementation sucked. Like it was incredible that they got anything working at all in that time, but like it, you know, it had so many problems that it was amazing they kept it online as much as they did. It was huge, huge, huge achievement that no one gives them credit for. But I think people should know. It was really astonishing. They scaled up that like raggedy ass, for lack of better term, um, prototype to like 12,500 CPUs by the end. It was an enormous machine. Um, yeah, and so they kept it online, kept it growing. We started building out the token model for AO during that period leading up to June. And of course, also, testing like the outer limits of what you can do with this system, like validating that there's no, we could see that you could probably run LLMs on chain, but until you actually see it in front of you, you don't know like for 100% certain. Well, now we do. Yeah, and so that took us around to June. Everyone was excited, building a bunch of stuff. Um, okay, it's time to get mainnet because the testnet is starting to creak at this point. You can only take a really difficult software implementation like that so far without without like you can only throw so much hardware at it basically. Um, okay, so we have this team that super tight knit, super focused. They're keeping this machine online. Well, we got to build out mainnet, and it can't take too long. One thing you said about it's not like running a company. That is true. We're here to build protocols, and if it's not a protocol where you don't have to trust us to like use the service, then it doesn't have authenticity, as far as I'm concerned. So we got to get to the point where it's a real protocol, and uh, that means mainnet. And so the build out of that, we could start to see that okay, this machine is very modular. Even the legacy net implementation was pretty modular. So why don't we just start like replacing, the scheduling unit? And I started jumping in and helping out with that while the team, really everyone was just stretched incredibly thin, keeping the old thing online. There wasn't much attention available. Yeah, so I just started jumping in and helping. Like I built Arweave V1, about 80% of the code or something along those lines. So I know how to do this type of thing. And we were in a tight corner, like the team. We needed to get this done. If we go higher, right, that would be the obvious thing to do. Well, okay, you go higher, and it takes you like 3 or 4 months to find someone really, really good, or a set of people that are really good. And then it takes them like 2 months to onboard to get like productivity. Well, that's all the time we had before mainnet already. So that obviously wasn't going to work. And I have to make do with, just the tight knit team we had who are, they're so good at what they do that, yeah, it works, but still it's tough. So started helping out with that. And after the scheduler, the messaging unit started to flow. And then we got to the compute unit. And when we started to build that out for the mainnet implementation, we noticed something that is like trying to work out what is the sensible architecture for this machine. Like what's it supposed to, what is the archetype, if you will? Like what would this do if it was really a very, very good implementation of it? Because one thing that I'd seen with Arweave was like V1 was, well, it was pretty rough, just like, yeah, roughly functional, but the architecture was also wrong. It took us until Arweave 2.6 to get the architecture right. And the thing is that took, I want to say 4, 5 years, something like that. We could have compressed that to like 18 months. If we knew the right architecture from the start, it would have been very simple. And so with AO, it's really determined, okay, we just get it right to begin with. Then we avoid all of this like hard forks and inevitable disagreements about should it work like this or should it work like that. And then you find that, well, half of the ecosystem is dependent on this one obscure behavior that wasn't even really intended, and the other half is not. So you can't change it, and it becomes very, very difficult. You get like a protocol ossification, whether you want to or not. And so we started, building out the compute unit, and we realized, yeah, each of these individual pieces of computation, they should be like stackable. And what we're really talking about here is a machine that lets you address a position in the state space of all programs. Basically, give an ID to like run this computation, do this and this and this and this, and you'll be at this specific point in the program's execution. That specific point should be called ID whatever, and then an ability to attest to, well, what is at that ID. And then on top of that, down the line, flexible systems for security. Like, what do you do when there's a dispute? How do you know that one of those attestations is correct? And so we started to explore that design. Oh, and the other component is that it's not just like everything is a process. It's everything is a computation, right? There should be these devices or many virtual machines should be loadable inside this one, if you will, meta virtual machine, like a security virtual machine. And there should be this neutral language. So we started to explore this, and it was really not obvious what that machine is. One of the things that's really exciting about it is it's just, if you really understand it, and I've probably explained it to like 50 people individually now, something like that. And and I always ask like, hey, okay, what is that? When it normally takes like 15 minutes to understand, to like describe it verbally in such a fashion that they grok the meme. And I asked them like, hey, how would you describe that? No one yet has got a good answer, which is really interesting. We're out in like unknown territory, and that's normally where the exciting things are found. And so instead of cutting corners, we pursued it because we thought that long term, this is how we end up with a machine that is, well, truly decentralized supercomputer that scales arbitrarily to the size of cyberspace. Yeah. And so we thought, okay, well, with mainnet, the important thing is just ship the like kernel, right? The core architecture and the protocol basically for how do you make compute positions addressable? How do you attest to them? And then, yeah, ways that you can like stack those and a few other things, and then payments. Because meanwhile, so this was all happening at the same time as like people were trying to use a legacy net or test net, as it was called at the time, and it was just falling down all over the place. And there was no getting out of that without payments. Well, how do you make payments? Well, we could either like hack something crappy onto the existing system, or we could do it right. And just so happens that AO core is so modular and kind of primitive, if you will. The payment systems that you can put inside Hyperbeam, which is an implementation of AO core, they can be used for gating access to other HTTP services. So we thought, okay, well, first version of this machine should just be that. Like we'll have LegacyNet um, style uh, execution systems, messaging units, scheduling units, and then we can gate access. And we ran that for a while, but I'd say, yeah, we didn't communicate it very well. It's not an easy concept to understand. Um, yeah, and I'd say that's one of the things that went very poorly. Uh, and then we just moved on to, okay, well, let's just make it so people can like run new computation on Hyper-Beam. And then, finally, okay, now let's backport the ability to run all of the old processes into the new mainnet system. And that, had people asking, well, like, what network is the process on? It's just a very understandable question, but it doesn't really work like that. They're not like on any network in particular. It's that they're on Arweave. And then the way that that data is interpreted on LegacyNet and mainnet should match, essentially. So then they exist on both. But none of this is easy to describe. And taking along that crowd who, yeah, well, we all see like, 5 seconds of most of the content that we feel like we've engaged with. Like if it's nuanced, it's not easy to describe. But anyway, yeah, that was sort of largely the story of mainnet. But I'm super, super excited about where we sit now. Like we have a machine that is so broad that it can give us the same security guarantees that you would get with smart contracts on the delivery of content from Arweave to web browsers using headers that give us verifiability. It's like, yeah, if you're from a Web3 engineering background, you probably see how weird that is and exciting. Like when you put a transaction on Ethereum, it's like very clear that you're sending something to some other little world, and then you access it through web services. But it's like distinct. It's a different island. The notion that you could have security for the upload itself or the download or all the user interfaces you see to the end user's browser, having the same security as they do on chain is just like, it doesn't exist anywhere else. So I think we're sitting on something extremely, extremely exciting. And that's why I personally bought like, I think it's about $1 million minus some tax. I bought some Bitcoin at 17K. And so I sold and bought some AO because it strikes me as just so clear. And there's no, knowledge that I have that other people don't have. It's all like in the repo. You can go read it yourself. Just read the commit log and it tells you everything we're thinking. Yeah, I think we're sitting on something truly amazing. But we got to get better at describing it.
It almost sounds like what's harder, building it or explaining what you're building.
Definitely explaining it.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing to build because at many different points, it got this strange sense like it should work like this. Like I can't describe why or like give simple words to what the machine is in totality. But it's very clear that like this is the obvious choice for how it should function. Yeah, but describing it to people, like you give 10 minutes, you can describe it, but in like 3 words.
In a 60-second TikTok reel, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I think Arweave was nice because permanent information storage, 3 words.
That's easy. Yeah.
Yeah. AO, you could say the 3-word version is like scalable, verifiable computer. Something like that.
That's nice.
But like what that actually means,
Yeah.
it doesn't map onto anything else that like exists. So
There's no like face of comparison.
yeah, exactly. I guess if you wanted like it's X but Y for it, like with Arweave, it's like, okay, permanent information storage. What does that mean? It's like S3 doesn't forget. There's a lot more to it than that, but like that's the broad idea. AO would be something like cyberspace, but verifiable. Or I was about to say the web, but cyberspace is actually more like HTTP, and by extension, all of the things that are enabled by HTTP, all of the apps, all the experiences that make up our notion of cyberspace today, but in a verifiable, trustless form.
Almost like almost like honest cyberspace, where it's like cyberspace that you can verify.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Uh, and did you ever have you ever had? And I'm curious, and I'm not just talking about AO, but R Reef. A night where you had a doubt that things were going to be able to make it, and this could be all the way back in your very early, like Arweave Day 5. It could be during AO. It could be any time in between. Did you ever have any doubts where you're like, I don't know if this is gonna get off the ground?
Oh, um, certainly. Like at the beginning, I thought it was insane. Like I spent many years doing this PhD, and I was basically throwing it away to pursue building this thing because I thought it needed to exist. And I thought the odds of success were extremely low. And even if we did succeed, for me personally, I thought I would end up in like Ecuadorian embassy, whatever that looks like, V2. Because, you build like a ledger of speech that no one can censor.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. No one's come for me yet. Anyway, and so I thought the odds of like Arweave succeeding on its own, it was worth doing because it should exist. Um, was it likely? No. And then that, I'd live to tell the tale, even less likely. And so only like in the last year or two have I got to the point where I think, it's a permanent information storage system. It's like, okay, 7 going at 8 years old, that's great, but like that's early days. Um, Now, is it likely to succeed from this point of view? From this point, I think there are so many people that care about it now, and it needs so little maintenance, and it's so robust and resilient. It's like truly a complete protocol. Um, I think it's pretty likely at this point. But I know, I guess I'm a kind of naturally slightly pessimistic person, so I'm always, like if you build a machine like this, not because you're super um, optimistic about things, I guess. It's a backstop. It's a shield, if you will, from many things that we were concerned were coming. Um, yeah. Is it likely to succeed from here? Yeah, I think so at this point. But time will tell.
So here's a question. Wow. Like if
Why?
stress of, quitting or pausing your PhD to build something that was pretty out there at the time. And then you did it again. You were actually joking. You have protocol launch, PTSD. I remember around the time of the AO mainnet. You could have, it's not like you had no stress in the world, but you just decided to do it again. Why? Why not be on a beach, man?
uh, so why start Arweave or AO?
Both. Like, why do it the first time and then you did it again? You had a protocol that was starting to be very easy to maintain, and then you just said, you know what? Let's just torch the next year of my life so I can get this off the ground. Why? Why?
Uh, okay, so with Arweave, I just thought it should exist. And also I thought it was possible. Not probable, but possible. There's nothing that stops such a machine from existing. It's quite rational. And also the fit of like, okay, who could go and build such a thing? Well, I was building distributed systems, um, for years before that. Like that's my zone. So I was pretty sure I could build it. And then I hacked together like a rotor-type version of the block weave structure at 3 a.m. one morning. So yeah, okay, this works. Like this is computationally sound. But fundamentally, it needed to exist, and I guess glossing over the why it needed to exist. Uh, at that time, this was like just after a series of elections across the Western world um, that had highlighted that there was a deep divide between left and right. Like the era of managerial politics was dying, and things were becoming more and more destabilized. And at the same time, um, I think the Edward Snowden leaks showed us. I once toured the Stasi Museum in Berlin,
Mm.
and the thing I was struck by is that they needed so much space and so many people to surveil their relatively small society. Now it's like a cupboard, and they're doing it. It's real. Okay, so we live in a like neo neo police state already. Like it's a question of who's got their finger on the buttons, or the who controls the machines, but like all of the infrastructure exists and is in, like, it's not like it would need to be deployed. It's hypothetically exists. No, it's like in production, right there, resilient, well tested at this point. Um, yeah, and I saw that basically the future could be very, very good in with the changes that are happening in that sort of migration to cyberspace as we've been discussing, but also they could be extremely, extremely bad. Um, okay, like that's a motivating factor. Uh, and so what are you going to do about it? Well, like one thing that is necessary in order to really establish an authoritarian regime is to control what people think. I won't say the country, but people will probably be able to work it out. There is an authoritarian country where the members of the ruling party number 3% of the population. That means that 97% of people are living under their rule. And I think a lot of them, you know, would you say with fullness of available information, would not want to be.
Mm.
But but yet they still are after a very, very long period of time. And why is that? Well, if you want to control a population, the first thing to do is to control their minds, because then they don't fight back. Um, and so I thought, well, okay, you know, uh, blockchains, these machines that replicate information around the world, have just been invented, or like at this point, actually been almost 7, 8 years. But like they're just reaching some level of maturity. It seems pretty obvious that if you want to store a piece of information and have it replicated for an extremely long period of time, have it be resilient, well, engraving it in a blockchain is a good idea. Problem is, it doesn't scale. Okay, so let's go make it scale. Like, it's not an intractable problem. Um, that was it for Arweave. And then for AO, it's interesting. I actually don't see it as different, really. So along the track building Arweave, there's Arweave as permanent information storage system, just like ledger of human speech and culture, um, in a sort of non-real time sense. That's sort of, let's say the primary use of Arweave, and it has certain principles attached that we engraved in the machine itself, such that no one, including us, can mess with them. But there's also along the way we saw that, well, this can actually be like a real-time useful machine to people, uh, not just in the function of giving us access to, or like transmitting data across time, you could say, but in the downstream effects of information permanence, which are like, yeah, readily useful today. And that didn't seem, yeah, it was a surprise to realize that there was a lot there. And that's actually like the birth of the idea of the PermaWeb. Uh, Look, when you make data permanent, you also, to some extent, relinquish control of it. It becomes part of a global digital commons. And if that contains, web applications and services, well, now you have open, transparent, neutral services for all people to access. And as soon as it's published, the person that has published it can't go back and change it later. Um, I think that's a huge, huge deal, and exactly what we need at this time where control over cyberspace is in decreasingly few people's hands. This is the trapdoor and the antidote. So why build AO? Well, put simply, because this machine needed it. Like, we needed a scalable smart contract system. We needed a scalable way to transform data and have the results be verifiable, just like the inputs or the static data, if you will. And then, we built AO core, not just AO processes, because, well, we needed also, for one, it just seemed like the right way to build the machine. I care very much that we build high quality, well-engineered systems that, to the best of our abilities at least, are correct. You could say, not just like trash we've thrown out. That doesn't give a good grounding for people to use or build upon long term. Because with the protocol, you can't just go in and like change it. It's very difficult to do that by its nature, and so it should be. Otherwise, someone could change it and break it. But yeah, so we expanded it to AO core, yes, for that reason, but also because we saw that we needed trustless services built on top of Arweave that were further than, what do you say? Yeah, that went further than just like replicating data across time. We need to deliver that data to people's browsers. We need to be able to query that data. And we need to be able to trust the services that let us do that. We also need to be able to upload it in bundles so that the entry of data into the system is scalable. And we need to be able to do that without the person offering the bundling service being able to censor it. And AO core was the answer to all those questions. It's very interesting. It all like slotted into place.
Wow. If if it let's say worst case scenario, it doesn't work as planned. We're in early innings now, and you mentioned you're a pessimistic guy. Would it still have been worth it for you?
Define doesn't work out. I mean, for Arweave not to work out, like, it's an any honest machine. It needs one person to replicate the data and keep a node online. One alone. Well, I'm going to do it if no one else will. So, like, unless I really, really screw up, and if I will, then God forbid, then I just fork the chain from last best known point and keep going. Like, it only loses if we all give up, and I'm not going to do that. So, now the PermaWeb is different. Like, this is a higher up the stack bet. There's, I think, will we succeed in building it? I don't have a doubt about that. I did 2 years ago because I saw that, there's a lot of motion and excitement, but like not a lot of actual building. Well, it's not true. It's not a lot of shipped features that meaningfully decentralize things. Uh, Okay, going back to the beginning. So it's very weird to be a founder in crypto. Yeah, and one of the strange things is that there is no incentive to build machines that have high integrity, other than the incentive that comes from oneself. Like, if you look around, like almost all of the things being built in supposed Web3, there's a huge asterisk in the technical details that mean it's not really offering the service that people claim it is. Because actually the service that those people are building is speculation on a token. I digress. Yeah, so building the PermaWeb is a bigger, more speculative bet to some extent. I don't think we will, from this point, fail at building the infrastructure to provide it in a properly trustless way. I think at home on my whiteboard, I have a tech tree. Basically, we need like this service so we can build that service so we can build that service. And every day when I'm leaving, I walk past this thing, and I see now that we're at 80 to 90% on every single component, apart from actually Vouch DAO. That's a separate conversation. But really, the core infrastructure is there. It's just a case of making it resilient, scaling it with AO Core and Hyperbeam in production. But it works. Will people adopt it? That's the fundamental question. And I think we stand a really good shot with using Odyssey, basically bringing that audience what they wanted all along, which was a decentralized, resilient, trustworthy social network, but using that also as the springboard to make sure there's content for developers to build upon and to, well, spawn the permaweb, basically. I think it is all to play for, and that's why I'm very excited still. Yeah, despite what was, by I think all accounts, a pretty rough year. But yeah, to me, actually, we've probably never been in a better spot, at least from the point of view of technology and opportunity. It's funny how there's such a difference between the way people feel and the reality.
Mm, it is fun. Well, I couldn't think of a better note to end this on than maybe a prediction or two for next year. That could be a prediction for the permaweb, could be a prediction for the state of the industry. Any inklings as to what people might look ahead to in 2026?
Well, there's things on our roadmap, um, but I think the bigger thing that we have to keep our like minds glued to is, what is the progression into cyberspace looking like? Like who, yeah, what are the technologies that people are using? How much time are people spending engaging with these things? Of the things that matter to people, what proportion of them exist purely in cyberspace? Um, yeah, and my prediction. This is somewhat off topic for the permaweb, but my prediction would be that we'll see that accelerating. I think one prediction that's kind of on the line, so straddles between the permaweb and outside, is people will start building digital twins of themselves, and then it will start reaching. And it's probably not 2026.
Mm,
I don't know, like sometime in the next few years, we will start reaching like a crunch where it becomes very obvious that the trustworthiness of the compute itself really matters. In the same way that, like, you know, uh, 2009, 2010, social media was cool.
mm,
Everyone was adopting it.
mm.
And then it wasn't until like 2014 to 2017 that the effects of censorship on those machines and what that really means in practice became clear to people. I think that will start to manifest as well. I mean, so many things, but like those are, yeah, those are the trends that I wake up every morning. I'm like, okay, gotta go make sure that when we land in cyberspace, it doesn't suck. Yeah.
Perfect. I could not think of a better way to end this. Well, thank you for making sure our experience on cyberspace does not suck.
Hey, what? Give it a try. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.